Now she means later.
All right, call meeting order at 6:39 PM. The roll call, we've got Bylaski has an excused absence. Fisher.
Here.
Kalis.
Here.
Sowski. Here. Long. Marzullo. He might be late. Pearl.
Here.
Para.
Yep.
Romanovsky.
Here.
Schuster. He is an excused absence. And Sherpicki.
Here.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have a quorum. Okay, let's stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, did everybody get a chance to look over the meeting minutes?
Yep.
Any updates to it?
Not since May.
I updated your name. That was autocorrect. It autocorrected
Then we're
from-
good.
From Pepera to Pepper. All right, so motion to,
I have one tiny suggestion, where you put whiteboarded. Um, Could we maybe just say it was charted with some use of Chat GPT? Or do we not want to mention Chat GPT?
I would prefer not.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
so are we keeping it as this?
Sure.
Okay. Motion to approve,
So moved.
moved by Sean,
Sure.
Second.
seconded by Marcus. All in favor?
Aye.
Any days? All right, so, first thing we'll do is review the mission statement. Yeah. Oh, it took care of it. I know why it was. I had those windows open. Actually, I'm muted, so. All right, just to recap, the mission statement, everybody's still good with that? Hackney Township is committed to preserving its rural character, natural resources, and individual property rights while fostering a safe, family-oriented community. Through strong township governance, thoughtful planning, and community engagement, we strive to balance controlled growth, protection of our small town values. We proudly serve as a model for rural preservation, offering residents space, independence, and a superior quality of life in a uniquely desirable setting.
It's that one comment. I know I'm being a nuisance and I apologize.
Can you click on that button? Thank you.
Sorry. Rural is just such a hackneyed term. And I'll point out that the Census Bureau defines rural as an area or region or a settlement with fewer than 5,000 people. That's it. I promise I won't mention it again.
Yeah, it strikes me that it's in there twice too. You know, it's preserving its rural character and then rural preservation. And that's the one I wonder if it should be changed from rural preservation to some other,
Call it.
word.
If you ever run for office, I'll vote for you.
I agree
Could we
with you.
substitute natural for the first rural?
Preserving its natural character.
Then the next word, next phrase is natural resources though. But I guess that's okay.
Natural character, natural resources.
Otherwise, I'm happy with. the way
Model
it
of
is.
environment.
You could just say preserving its,
Serve as a model of, is it environmental preservation? Is it, what is the preservation? Habitat preservation? I just don't know.
I think natural. I mean, that's kind of.
Is your intention to include this mission statement in the plan?
eventually, yes.
Or is it a guide just for us?
Well, it's a guide for us to start, and it's something that clearly can be adjusted as we go through this process.
Sure.
Because as we go through it, we might say, this doesn't make sense, or, you want to add something to it.
And would you put it in the first few pages?
It would be, yes, it'd be something that the reader would be able to read and say, this is what this document is gonna tell me about and how it's gonna happen.
What about model of historic preservation?
I like that.
Where's that gonna go?
Instead of rural preservation.
Oh, okay. So,
And part of it is along the lines that he was thinking, this is again, something that outside readers will see and hear. And I don't think a lot of people outside of Hinckley, again, would say that we're rural. And so for this to be our front and center statement, I almost think it does a disservice to us because they see it and they say, wait a minute, you guys aren't rural anyway. So why am I going to look at this or validate this when you're not even characterizing yourself in a way that we would think of you from the outside? Because I know a lot of people within Hinckley recognize it as rural, but I'm not so sure that a lot of people outside of Hinckley say that. So we want this mission statement to be accurate for what outsiders would also think of Hinckley as being.
historical,
Mhm.
And I like the first one, the natural character. I mean, that's what, we talked about a lot last time, is just like,
I've read the four.
nature. and-
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, just saying like nature, kind of that natural character, but again.
I've read all four of the plans several times recently, and rural is used consistently in all of them.
So then maybe change the second natural resources, environmental resources.
Yeah.
this one right here.
Yeah.
You're supposed to do strike through and underline, Cindy.
Well, so here's the problem, I'm not using Word, I'm
Oh.
using Pages. So I'm at a disadvantage because, I don't have Word yet on my,
I like that.
Well, at least you had strike through
I have strike through and I could actually probably use
I
the
like-
color, but.
I'm just kidding with it. It's fine.
No, you're not, you're serious.
That's a lawyer.
All right, so, Hinckley Township is committed to preserving its natural character, environmental resources, and individual property rights, while fostering, et cetera, through, blah, blah, blah. And then we probably serve as a model of historical preservation, bring residents space, dependence, and spirit.
I like that.
Everybody likes that? Okay, so modify. Okay, so this is what I did. I went to the 2015 plan. And my goal was to strip out all the pretty pictures and all the unnecessary stuff. But that got to be a very complicated task, because I had a PDF that I needed to convert to Word. And then when I saw the underlying formatting in Word, it was just, I spent a day. So basically, I said, what is the important thing about the 2015 plan that we should look at, that we want to start reviewing and figuring out where to go from where? And that was the 5 kind of, want to call them chapters. And they had objectives and action. So what I did is and there was a few drafts interspersed, but I'll get to those later, but basically, like this, I know it's tiny right now, but if you remember those pages out of the 2015 plan. So before we go there though, what I did is I pulled out the 5 components that were addressed in the 2015 plan. It was land use, economic development, character plus image, community services and infrastructure, and mobility. So the first question is, are those the components that we want to continue using? Because over time, they have kind of blended, merged, had different names. Are we satisfied right now, stay with those components, or do you want to see them combined? Do you want to add something else? I know I've kind of thrown in. That's right. Before we even go there, actually, we had a question come up. So the 2015 plan is what we are working on. In 2022, there was a audit committee, maybe some of you were on it, that looked at the comprehensive plan. And however, that is not part of the comprehensive plan. And I think that maybe the 2 trustees that were still here at the time, or were part of that process, might like to address.
We were asked if we might make a comment, just so that you'll know where we were at, because at one point, there was the idea that we would take all the information that was gathered and then attach it to the plan for reference purposes. Problem I have with that, I believe OHM did a disservice to the township. I don't think the questions that were drafted were clear in what people were responding to. I don't think they knew exactly what the implications were with how they responded. And they were kind of structured to drive it in a certain direction. That's my opinion only. And that's why I objected to including those, because at that point, it becomes, okay, well, are you looking at the existing plan? Are you looking at this addendum to it? Which I didn't think it should be one. So that's why I voted to not include those. I don't think that the information gathered was accurate, and I don't believe it was relevant to what we were trying to do, what we were trying to look at with that existing plan. So that was where I was at. Jean?
I agree with all of those points. Another reason that I voted against it was, looking at the results from the audit versus the 2015 plan, and even just within the 2015 plan, I think that there's a lot of contradictions throughout it, and the audit contradicted quite a bit of the 2015. So to add that in, I felt was a liability to the township. I thought it made us more vulnerable. The prosecutor agreed with that opinion, and his advice was, if we were going to include the audit as part of the 2015 plan as an addendum or added into there, he said we should go through then and remove from the 2015 plan anything that contradicted. And at that point, we said, well, then we may as well just do a whole new comprehensive plan. So we said at that point, instead of including it, the vote was to leave it separate. It was there, so the data was there so that people could see it, but it was not part of the plan because it could have ended up being more of a liability for the township.
Thank you.
I just wonder if maybe we should take that data and at least use that as a reference point for both the types of questions that what we're then evaluating, posing ourselves. Because, we'll only be able to offer so much questions to the community. And so at least there we have a more recent data set to start to look at, what was wrong with those questions, or were those questions good questions, or where is the direction that we can see the township moving based upon those questions? Because as we update this, that's our most recent current data points. that
Well,
we
we're
have.
gonna start by looking at the objectives and action plans that were outlined and assess whether those are actually valid. And based upon those assessments, also based upon whatever discussions you have with various groups like HOAs, I encourage you to go out and, meet with different people. Whatever groups people you have, kind of take notes when you do that, at least mental notes, and then write them down when you get back home or something, because all these things that we're gonna be looking at are all gonna feed into developing a set of questions that will hopefully be representative of the different areas of the comprehensive plan, and asking, again, the questions that are most pertinent in assessing what our township should look like in the next 10 years. So we're not gonna rehash what was wrong with prior questions. That's not our goal here. Our goal is to focus on moving forward, developing questions, developing a survey that hopefully we can get some really good concrete direction. So I kind of want to get back to the 2015 plan, and these are the components that are in there. Are we satisfied with those components? Do they still make sense? Any thoughts? I mean, we can just continue moving on. That may be something you think about as we move through these.
The only thing I would add, or maybe I have concern about, and maybe it is just me, but I just see new external threats from, I just see the Hinkley Township being gobbled up by the metro parks, by Nowaka, who wants to control Northeast Ohio, and by Brunswick continuing to annex us. So I think we have to be concerned about external threats somehow. I don't know what that means. It just,
Right. And that might be something that gets external influences. And that can be on land
Those
use.
are threats. That's not even an influence, what he's talking about. And that's something that we can't stop.
oh yeah. I'm just kidding. I
Okay,
think we need to
So,
consider it somehow.
as I kind of leaf through the mobility
mhm,
chapter, I guess you might want to call it. It seems to me, this is just my opinion. It seems to me that the mobility chapter was there to justify a lot of the bike lanes and the bicycle paths.
mhm.
They added a little bit about roads and driving just to make it seem like it was. So, I'm not necessarily saying that we should completely do away with it. But boy, I probably wouldn't be opposed to it. Just seeing how much we would be left with if the bicycle stuff was just cut out.
But that's how, why would we move forward with a proposal to remove it when we don't even know whether the community doesn't want that? I mean, I think there's a suggestion implicit in that we'll remove it because the community doesn't want bike lanes, or the community doesn't want, park pathways. But we don't know that the community doesn't want that. So why would we remove it at this stage when we don't know whether the community wants that or not?
And I suppose that's fair. As I look at it, my first inclination is that it was placed there, just kind of looking back through some of the input that was put in. I don't know how much time was spent on it. I wasn't here in 2015. So maybe it was a bit harsh to say just completely get rid of it. We could ask some of those questions, but I do feel, as you read through it, I think it's obvious that it's there, it's put there to justify.
Yeah.
the bike paths. And again, knowing kind of the history that I know, with OHM and with some of the relationships, I'm a bit averse to it, just because, I feel like some of it was underhanded.
I just don't want to remove
Okay,
something.
Let's get back. All right, you guys are jumping ahead. We're gonna take this in seriatim. And so I appreciate your comments. Why don't you hold on to them when we get to that section? Otherwise.
Sure.
We'll be just.
Well, right, I'm just, you were picking
We're
off.
discussing the 5 sections.
Right.
Asking the
I
5
am,
sections
right.
and.
Can we just put a question mark in front of mobility
Okay. That's,
and move on?
thank you. Can
I would like to comment that I don't like the 2+ signs in there.
Yeah.
I don't like the image. And I would make community services and infrastructure, which I realize they're similar. I would make them separate categories. But I don't like the plus sign.
And more of an and kind of.
Sure.
Well, that was,
I mean,
so,
I've always been confused by the plus sign. I thought maybe it meant character plus they were trying to add
Yeah.
image on top of character.
so
And I don't think that was the intention.
character and image,
I'd just get rid of image and. But that's maybe I'm again premature. Image, by the way, the word image only appears twice in the whole report. The actual 5-letter word appears twice in that chapter.
Did you search for imaging too?
Pardon?
Just kidding.
all right, so let's just kind of throw that out there for now. And let's, I'm not gonna go through the graphs. These are old graphs. I'll be working on getting updated information based on the most recent census, along with whatever other planning information I get. So the first chapter, if you will, was the land use. And that had in the original 2015 plan, each chapter had its own goal. So I don't know if we want to continue to do that, but it was a balanced land use pattern that ensures Hinckley's rural characters preserved and enhanced while carefully planning for growth and development. So the first objective was to promote rural, low-density development, maintaining a 2-acre minimum lot in the R1 district, and direct density neutral conservation development as a preferred alternative development option in designated areas as shown on the future land use. So is this an objective that still we would seem reasonable that we would want to continue to, in one form or another, maintain?
I will start and say yes.
That must be the chair where people speak the most, because that's what Jeff just said last month. Okay, we have one yes.
Are we just doing, I guess I'm still struggling. Are we just doing gut feel or because, I'd say that that's very consistent with generally how I would approach things, but I know that there are some people who think that we should have larger lot sizes. There are probably some people who think should have smaller lot sizes. So
Well,
I'm just kind of,
so the question is this still a valid objective and are these valid action plans? So what is not objective, what would not be valid is something that has been overwritten in a way because of some other change in the way things are being done. So is this something that's still valid? This would be still something that would be thrown out to the community to question. But is this something that right now we want to preserve in the plan from 2015?
I think if you ask anybody that lives here, I think they're gonna say they want low density development. I mean, that's why we're here.
Right, right.
This. Can I? Okay.
Preferred alternative, but again, that's personal preference.
Pardon?
I don't know that it's a preferred alternative, but that's just personal preference.
And again, then that will be something that could get fleshed out in the surveys that get put out. But in terms of it not being something that is not attainable or is no longer valid, I would have to say that, you know, it's still somewhat valid.
Yeah.
Even if you personally don't prefer it. All right, so first objective kind of stays, right?
Mhm.
Second objective, revise conservation development requirements to encourage high-quality development and future land unit developments. That's what PUDs are. Of course, nobody probably knows that when they read this. Encourage the incorporation of architectural standards as part of each conservation PUD development plan. Encourage third-party reviews of conservation development PUD applications. Require property line markers within conservation developments, stone or concrete, wood stakes, bird feeders. And require enforcement of open space boundaries by the HOAs. So let's just kind of take each, maybe one of these. First of all, the overall objective.
Is our
Reasonable?
objective still to revise? So that's the, like, you know what I mean? That to me sounds like 10 years ago, we needed to revise it. Coming from, you know, your standpoint on the zoning commission, is that still something we need to revise? Or is that something that now is pretty much?
So maybe
standard?
if we look at maybe the actions first and then get back to the objective, because I think the actions will lead us to what the objectives should be. I'll tell you that we have no architectural standards. And so do we want architectural standards or not? You know, I've advocated for the business district, but even within that, there's been some people that are resistant to, given our limited government approach, to have those. And so maybe they don't want architecture standards. So that's one that we've never done. Encourage third-party reviews of conservation. Generally, I think our position has been that we don't want third-party reviews of most things. We always have the option to hire outside counsel, but it's not something that we normally do. The property lines, I actually think that that is something that we've incorporated somehow in. I know that we have, so I don't know if
Right,
it's a
usually-
subdivision standard that does that or if it's our code, I forget, but
Um,
there's something in there for that one.
Yeah, they have to be clearly marked, and I think the HOAs need to maintain them as well, and I think sometimes those are incorporated in the HOA agreements.
Yeah,
So like, the third one is probably already
It's-
happening.
right.
And the fourth one through HOAs, I mean, that's now part of what we do.
Right,
so.
and that's part of the zoning for conservation. So,
But we can't force them to have an HOA. They can disband the HOA, can't they?
but we can force them on the conservation easements that they have to have a fallback position
Okay,
on the conservation.
okay.
There's always got to be a designated secondary party.
And again, for clarity, it's only the people in that conservation development that can use the conserved land.
At least ours, that's correct.
So why
Specifically
do we care
says-
about it? Why do we care about marking the boundaries?
Because the township or whoever the third party inspector is, we want to make sure that there aren't property owners
Aren't encroaching?
Approach.
Mhm.
on it. So that's the
Okay,
purpose of the
fair
boundary bounds. So I'd say 3 and 4, we do. 1 and 2, we don't. And it's a question of, do you want 1 and 2? And if so, then objective 2, the revised conservation makes sense. If you don't want 1 and 2, I agree with you. I don't know that revised makes sense.
And I would also, like you were saying, the PUD. In my world, anytime you use an abbreviation, the first time you use it,
Yeah.
it needs to be written out.
Mhm.
So,
Planned unit development.
right, so I definitely think that in that LU.2, it needs to be written out.
Okay, so, so let's kind of work backwards. So 3 and 4, are they really necessary anymore? Because we're actually doing them?
I mean, I think that, just my opinion is that they should stay, just so that way, you know, in 3 comprehensive plans later, they don't get lost.
I agree, because it's, just because we're doing it doesn't mean it's still not pertinent.
Like, I don't think it's,
really
the idea is to pare it down to nothing.
Yeah,
Mhm, okay. So, can, maybe instead of required, well, I mean. we
How about
can-
maintain or, well, I mean, require still.
We can keep
Relevant.
required. Third-party reviews of conservation development PUD applications, like, we don't even do that.
And I don't know that we want to do that. Again, the
Agreed,
general
because then you have
sentiment
an
has been, we
you
don't
talk
want a
about
third party
external
involvement.
influences.
Agreed.
For external threats, you're gonna have maybe somebody who's more
Totally
urban
agree.
focused.
That's just
So-
adding more people to the table.
So would we agree to take out 2.2?
I would agree.
I would agree.
I agree.
Is that unanimous?
Yes.
And still keep number 1 in there? Although I don't know how you do that.
So
We
our
can
zoning
have
says-
architectural standards, right? I mean, we could put it in our code that you have architectural, whether the township wants to or so. It's a completely different story, but you could, I mean.
For instance, garage doors cannot face the roadway. They have to be on the side of the house, just as an
Do
example.
all kinds of things, yeah.
And again, that's just saying encourage. So it's not saying that we definitely need to or we don't need to. It's just basically stating that it might be nice if we would have that discussion.
Let's put it this way. It gives the zoning commission a tool that if the zoning commission 10 years, 5 years from now decides what we're seeing we don't like, we want to move towards architecture standards, we have
A loophole.
we have something that's encouraging us to move in that direction, just as a consideration as to, because again, this is written for the zoning commission to then utilize.
So going back to the objective, maybe the first word, verb, needs to change. Because, from this, I would say we may want to continue encouraging high
Maintain
quality,
instead of revise.
maintain conservation requirements to,
I think that that's fine.
Yeah, I don't like revise. I don't think, because I feel like that's like a redo.
In
Well, we haven't done it
2015
in 10 years then?
in 2015, there was only one conservation development, that was Whitfield Run. And years Walden,
There's now 3, so we had 2, we've gained 1.
so. But back then, there was, compared 2015 to what zoning code has now for conservation development.
Very
There's
different.
been a lot of updates to, so we'll just say. All right, support senior housing and skilled care in the township. Senior housing, amend the zoning code to allow detached independent living senior houses on small lots or cluster developments that will not exceed the maximum gross density of the zoning district. And allow as a conditional use and with building department approval, the expansion or renovation of primary dwelling units to accommodate the inclusion of an accessory dwelling unit, granny flat, within the R1 and R2 districts. There's a lot to chew up there. So number 1, continue to support the rezoning of properties currently served by infrastructure to allow the development of senior housing. So right now, the current senior housing that we have is in a B1 business district. And that was the only place where senior housing is conditionally permitted. So senior housing, according to our zoning code, cannot be built in a R1 or R2 district. And B1 is the only district. I don't think we allow it in B2 either. So, and it must be served by infrastructure to allow that, which predominantly would be
B1 is.
water and sewer, because it's a high density type of thing. So 3.1, LU 3.1. What are your thoughts on that?
I feel like I'm
Go
doing too
for it,
much.
Candace. You can tell you to say something.
I don't like the senior housing. I don't think it was a good idea. I think you drive by it, it's got cheap siding, they just look cheap. They don't look like they belong in Hinckley, look more like it should be in Brunswick. So I don't want to continue to support any of that personally.
Senior housing was mentioned in the last three plans. And I think it became a part of the 2015 plan because of the wish tickets. What were they called?
Treasure
Tickets. Yeah. But
cards.
it backfired. It
Yeah,
simply
it did.
backfired on our community.
Mhm.
Did.
I don't really know how many seniors that lived in Hinckley are now living in that development that is fully occupied now.
So I think
believe.
most people that are residents aren't for it, don't want to say it because it's not. I mean, everybody wants to, we're all gonna get older, everybody wants to care for older people, but you're right, I mean, it does look cheap and.
And they're overpriced. I mean, I've looked at them as far as what they want. I mean, it's overpriced.
And in 20 years from now, they're gonna
They're
look terrible.
awful.
Well, and there was, oh, I'm sorry.
So I was just gonna say, I just think it opens the door for like, low income housing in
Yes.
20 years.
Correct.
And that's what I had brought up at one of the meetings when we were discussing that, before they were built. And it was like, they said there had to be some kind of percentage of people that lived there that were over 55. Okay, but then the rest of the people can be any age. And then what about the empty units you have there? Does that invite crime? You know what I mean? So like, I don't want to see more of those go up around. How many seniors do we really have that are moving out of their homes in Hinckley to this community? And how many do we have that are coming to the community? Would be questions I would ask.
Mhm. So, continue to support the rezoning of properties currently served by infrastructure to allow.
Can I take in a totally different direction for a moment? Sure.
I don't know, maybe.
The one thing that I also want us to be mindful of is we mentioned the annexation and we got to worry about Brunswick and annexation. The one benefit to the senior housing is that it's L-shaped and it cuts off any expansion along 303 further into Hinckley. Because as long as that property stays within Hinckley, there's no adjoining property that could be annexed over. So there is that advantage. The thing that I'm looking at in the future is all along West 130th. You can jump across West 130th to any of those properties. And those properties are all eligible for annexation because they're continuous with Brunswick, even though they're separated by a road. So what we want to look at in our future zoning is making sure that we have the flexibility along that road to do things that we might not otherwise want in Hinckley, because it's better to have the property in Hinckley than to have it in Brunswick and have no say over it. So there is that consideration that when we're looking at this, and especially when we get to the future land use map, we want to be careful not to pigeonhole ourselves so much that we have no availability to put things in over there. And it's what I call our firewall protection to make sure that encroachment doesn't come up further. Because when you look
We're
at,
focused on 130th, we have another
Right.
B1 district.
Well, that's what I was gonna say.
and that would, but that one doesn't have infrastructure.
Yet,
But your point is that you have the L shape, which is keeping it, right? But you can't guarantee that that's gonna be when the next one wants to go,
And
that you're gonna have that block.
Right. All I'm saying is that we want to watch to make sure that we're not developing we don't allow for our zoning within that West 130th district to be modified in any way.
so something I've always said, and, I like to think that, I'm fairly good at looking at maybe not the here and now, but maybe the bigger picture, so to say, is, we have, everyone says we don't have 100 contiguous acres to do any more of these projects with. But, but I try to look at that bigger picture and say like, okay, well, but we do have let's be honest, we have a population that is aging, myself included. And there's a lot of people with these 25, 30, 15, 5-acre properties that, in these certain pockets of Hinckley, that it just kind of takes that one person to put that puzzle together. Like, for instance, State Road, You know, I know that there's not infrastructure there yet, but there is a golf course behind it. And that golf course goes, and maybe a couple of other little properties gets gobbled up in between, and now you have that 100 yes, acreages together. And then, you know, up in that corner, there is water. You know what I mean? And I just think that, you know, to say like, oh, there's no 100 acres, we're free and clear doing these conservation developments, or we're free and clear to not do X, Y, Z. I do think you have to think of, you know, it's not many of these properties that, you know, like are 20 acres, 4 or 5 of them get together, and there you go. You know, they're attached to a golf course, or they're attached, you know, up there by Walden. You know, Hinckley is not that big. It's what, 21 square miles? At some point, we're gonna have water. At some point, we're gonna have sewer. Hopefully, it's not in my lifetime, but eventually it's gonna be here. And I think our job in this process is just to maybe try and push that bar just a little bit outside. Eventually, you know, it's all gonna happen, but I do think that we need to think about the possibilities that maybe aren't right in front of us now, but that could be.
So in terms of senior housing and skilled care, are we saying for now, we're gonna continue to support the rezoning of properties currently served by infrastructure to allow the development of senior housing?
I am not the popular vote, but I just think senior housing should stay. But if we leave it out, then does that leave us totally open to it coming in? I guess that's the question.
Well, it's already happened because you already have one here now. So you've already opened the door. It's already cracked open.
But
So should we try to like make it
or
tighter?
if we just
Like,
say fulfilled, senior housing has now been fulfilled in Hinkley County.
I almost don't know why we need this one because we're to support the rezoning of
I
properties
don't want to read.
for senior. We don't rezone for senior, right? We'll rezone for B1. And if senior is one of the things that comes in there, then that would be permissible. But we're not rezoning properties to allow for senior.
But you did. I mean, not you, but that's what happened
Sure.
over there.
Yeah.
There were.
It was a
couple
rezoning.
small Residential parcels that were rezoned to B1 to make that happen.
Right, but it was not to fulfill this objective because
But
that
that
was
would have
never
actually,
afforded.
that.
It
that-
would have
that-
That's what
but it-
supported that.
But what I'm saying is I don't know that that needs to be there because we wouldn't rezone it as, or I don't know that we want to encourage the rezoning for purposes of senior housing.
Of
So I
senior
think that we could almost eliminate that because of that.
And
reason.
because it's conditionally permitted use in B1, it's already something that can happen if the space.
Right, and we can deal with that on the land use, when we look at the land use map and how future development might be. I don't know that we need it.
I don't hate that
rezone
idea
for
of striking
senior.
it all.
Can we look at this one backwards? If we did make it a survey question, and let's just say we had 100% response, what would that 100% response be towards senior
They
housing?
don't
That'd be a
want it.
big fat no.
They don't want
they
it.
don't want it, yeah.
Nobody
I
wants to
feel
say
like
it out loud, but
Does
they
that help guide
That
what we're
ship
talking
has
about here?
passed.
You know, the evidence that I use, right, so I live on Bridge, there's a bunch of 3/4 acre lots around me. Now, obviously, there's still a yard to take care of. Some of the houses are on slabs. Generally, they're about 14 to 1,600 square feet. If there is the desire for the senior housing, I figure that those houses should be the most expensive houses per square foot in Hinkley Township, if that desire that was there the first time actually exists. Right, these houses sit there for quite some time and they don't really go for that much money when they do end up selling, so I figured they would have been attractive. Not necessarily the case.
I mean, I think people see the quality or lack thereof of what's there, and they don't want more of it. And I think that if people were on the fence before, I think if you put it in a survey now, people are gonna be like, absolutely not. Because
Well,
we see what it looks
Well, I
like.
think you would though get a segment of the population that would say, yes, I want senior housing if it's something I could afford.
I think you're gonna have somebody out there, a few who are gonna be for almost anything. It's just if you look at the vast majority of people that are here, they don't want it.
Agreed.
Maybe we'd be polling the people that already live in the senior housing and they just want.
True.
Okay, so number 2, 3.2, amend the zoning code to allow detached independent living senior housing on small lots or cluster
We don't want to
developments.
amend the zoning.
Pardon?
I don't think we want to amend the zoning code. I think Marcus was saying, correct me if I'm wrong, this whole LU .3 stricken.
Oh, no. I actually think the granny flat is going to be important.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So let's do the two.
So certainly 3.1, I agree with. 3.2, or strike through, 3.2, that one's just a question for you. Maybe you just say, look, we already got to conservation and that's sufficient and we don't need to amend for detached independent living. I don't know. I don't have any real strong feelings on 3.2.
So I don't recall what the code says about senior housing, but there was that issue with the apartments that originally were supposed to be independent homes and then, then they became cluster homes. And I don't, honestly, I can't remember what the zoning code is. For whatever reason, it's all not in my head. I don't know, Suzanne, if off the top of your head. You can think of what
Oh, I didn't even know you were here.
senior
You're stuck in.
housing can look like, but, so that would be the question, I mean, the thing is that, we almost go back. Zoning code, but
I will say, if you surveyed people, seniors, and ask what, if they wanted senior housing, what would they want? It's probably 3.2. They probably want something more like 3.2. If they want senior housing, that's probably what they're envisioning, is more of these detached, small lot cluster homes that have our maintenance free. So if senior housing what people want, I would say it's 3.2.
And those would be homes, not
Homes,
apartments.
correct.
So,
But should we delineate between that, which is, these are rentals versus you own these? Because I think that's a huge,
Yeah,
that's a
We really
huge.
can't delineate that, right? How,
If you have a development, I mean, you can be within an association and someone can say you cannot rent.
an association can.
But that's what I'm saying is that's. I would think that because if it's quote unquote maintenance free, you're gonna have the sell for any senior is gonna be like, okay, we have an HOA, they mow your lawn, they do this for you. So you've got an association. So I think if you delineate between that, which is these are rentals versus you own these, that's gonna be a big,
But
big
what I'm saying
difference.
is, on a zoning perspective, how do you do that? The only way that I know to do that is to do the separate parcels, which I think that this already says, because it's small lots. So as long as they're on separate parcels, each one of those is an individually owned parcel, as opposed to what the senior housing is, which is one parcel.
although it's,
with
this
much-
one says four cluster developments, which usually implies shared wall between 3 or 4 homes. So,
Affordable housing is an issue in the United States right now. I think we want to be very careful because in California, in unincorporated San Diego County, in the year 2017, they voted in ADUs, accessory dwelling units. Anybody who had a house, a single-family house on a residence, was allowed to build an ADU in the back.
Mhm.
But there were restrictions on the ADU. There was actually there's 5 different plans. They're restricted to about 1,100 square feet, a minimum of 960, a maximum of 1,180. But that could be a movement that could affect us in the next 10 years. And suddenly we'd have an ADU. Anybody who wanted to could build a second one in their backyard.
and you don't have
and I
control.
think the
So,
finishing
I'm sorry,
part
was
of
that clear to everybody what I said?
yeah.
And I think the end statement on that is that those ADUs could be independently owned, no longer went with the principal homeowner.
I'm not aware of that. You couldn't subdivide the property.
Yeah, I think that
They
was
were
the
meant
cap.
to be, they were meant to be granny suites
They were meant to be, but I
in
think it
the
evolved into.
2017 law.
But the housing crisis got to be so bad that they were saying you can sell your accessory dwelling unit to somebody. So it's kind of like
See, that's the problem. You have no control for what they could use it for.
a two.
So I think we want to be very careful with this one.
I agree with
Well,
you.
aren't there existing zoning laws that forbid 2 dwellings on the same lot?
Mhm.
Today,
Yes,
here,
today.
but the state of California.
Oh, okay.
No,
I-
state-
Well, it wasn't the state of California recommended it to all unincorporated areas. And San Diego moved on it because they are so close to the border and needed low-cost housing. And it went through, it was voted through in 2017.
Whatever we do here, the zoning commission then goes through and says, okay, well, let's move towards this. So if we, start adding those things, well, then zoning could say, okay, well, now you can have these 2 units on each, 2 units on whatever property. I agree with you, we have to watch.
So do we want 3.2 to stay in there at this point? Nothing's set in stone, and these are gonna be the basis of questions that we're gonna ask on our surveys, so.
I just don't like the cluster development. I just don't like that. I don't, and again, as you said, I don't like the shared wall aspect of it. And as someone who has rental properties, renters are different than owners in the way that they treat things. So,
So you're in favor of removing the 2 words cluster development?
Or
Yeah.
cluster development.
Okay,
I'm not opposed to that by any means. Or cluster development to be removed.
I think I'm okay with 3.2, removing those 3 words.
Yeah, I don't know what maximum gross density means.
Of the zoning district,
Yeah, what's maximum gross density?
well, that would be, if it's R1,
One house.
one house per 2 acres.
Oh, then how does that make sense on small lots then? Are you saying it's a conservation? That's why
Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand what,
All right,
because otherwise you might as well become a conservation and not deal with seniors at all. So that's why I'm kind of like trying to understand what this means.
but I mean, I
by-
think, I didn't write the 23.
I know,
No,
I'm just looking at the words and like, what does it mean?
I think you're absolutely correct. That's
I think you're totally
legalese. That's legalese that OHM pushed onto us,
mhm.
that can be interpreted by attorneys any way they want.
I
Because
agree.
you don't understand it. I don't understand it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with Cindy on what that possibly means, but it makes no sense in the
Right.
context of
Right.
that you're.
But in a court,
And ironically, 3.3 specifically calls out R1 and R2,
Mhm.
so it's kind of.
Redundant? Do you need it? Do you need?
Do you need
No, we could
L2?
say
Yeah.
housing on small lots.
I would just leave it at that,
And just
housing on small lots.
period after
Does that
small
open
lot.
us up to anything though?
This is only a
No.
guidance for
Yeah.
the commission.
So 3.3, so first of all, the building department, we don't have a building department in the township.
So should that be
So
reworded?
as a
We don't have
conditional
it.
use and with building department approval, I mean, the zoning guides the uses and building department guides the construction of the, the residents. So if you don't mind, I want to strike out and with building approval because it's just
Agreed.
not even appropriate.
Is that boilerplate?
I'm okay.
Yeah, looking back at some of the stuff I had, Garrett gave me this folder, from the 2014-2015 plan, and going back and looking through some of the worksheets, it really did seem a lot of work everywhere.
A
they
lot
go.
of chat GPT.
So, back and forth chat. They were definitely effective.
So allow as a conditional use the expansion or renovation of primary dwelling units to accommodate the inclusion of an accessory dwelling unit within R1 and R2, which is the residential districts.
I don't know if I would call it an accessory dwelling unit,
Right, because that implies,
that it's a detached, separate unit.
And it's dwelling, so you.
Yeah, I would just say,
Somebody living there.
I would almost just leave it at, the expansion renovation of a primary dwelling unit, to accommodate the inclusion of a,
Well, this is the in-law suite.
yeah, it is, it's the in-law suite. And I will say, I think Suzanne, correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably one of the most commonly asked questions in the township.
And the answer today is,
What is the answer today?
Don't call it an in-law suite.
But it has to be part of the home, correct? It's not a separate.
Principal dwelling.
So I think that's the way we need to word it, is expansion, blah, blah, blah. You know,
And
attached to the primary.
Well, it already,
dwelling.
expansion or renovation of primary dwelling, it already says
Okay.
that.
So it means you have to put an extension on your house.
Correct.
yes,
Right,
to accommodate the,
but you wanna take out the of an accessory dwelling, right?
That-
right,
Yeah, that's what I, yeah.
So you can't put like an apartment above your barn. Is that what we're saying? Because that's an accessory dwelling. So you're saying I'm not gonna put grandma upstairs above the barn. You know, so you want it, it has to be on your main
Hmm.
dwelling.
I would
house.
just say to
Basically
accommodate the
adding a bedroom
inclusion of an
to it.
in-law suite, because that's what everyone knows it as, it's an
Right.
in-law suite. And get rid of granny flat, I don't hear, that's such an old term, British.
You know, going back a little bit to 3.2 and the cluster development. If you go to page 27, comprehensive plan, it talks about the two major indicators that represent a strong residential. It was covered in there. And it had the two things, it's a share of the owner occupied units and unit vacancy. And the share of the owner occupied units in Hinckley at that point was 94.7%. So it just, you know, I agree, you know, and unit vacancy, I don't know what we're at now, that was 3.7. But just sticking with the theme as much as possible. Having those things, making sure that they're connected is less likely to become
so going
rentals.
to the objective itself, support senior housing, which is what those action plans discuss, and skilled care,
Yeah, I'd remove that.
that's not really appropriate,
Correct.
It's nothing within any of these action items anyway.
right?
Correct.
I'm pretty sure as you went along and you looked at some of the results, the skilled care stuff was very unfavorable, the opinions about.
Well, again, I think our zoning addresses some of those things too.
Are you taking out and skilled care? So
Correct.
it's gonna read support senior housing in the township?
Mhm.
Mhm.
And that's how you would do it, just.
Okay, what do you want it to say? Well,
I don't like the word support because that feels like you're
Okay.
advocating for it, like define. Define senior housing in the township as what our parameters would be for it. I just don't like support. It feels like,
We
oh, we're
want
open
it.
we're open to this and come on.
I will say both of these two action items that are remaining are what I would say are support or develop.
I mean, I think you don't wanna, I mean, you can support it, but it's supporting it the way that we want it.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So we don't wanna
I
build
just-
another, you know, we don't want a big nursing home. We don't, right? I mean,
Yeah.
nobody wants that. But if somebody wants to add a room on for grandma, what do we really care? You know, I mean,
We don't, but I mean,
So-
What about if we put limited, support limited senior housing or support,
I
you
don't
know,
hate
some
that.
word that would suggest that we're
And I'm
allowing
okay
like
for
We don't
that.
want it,
minor
but we'll
growth, but
tolerate
we're, because action items
we'll
3
talk
and
about
2
it.
are allowing for minimal support, right? We're moving in that direction, but we're constraining it.
I like adding.
I like
limited. I do too.
so what am I adding?
Support
Limited.
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 Senior housing.
Why don't you just say limit senior housing? No, I'm just, that would be a different verb. Support limited senior housing in the township.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. All right, LU4, grow consistently with the future land use map. All right, make future development. So we'll just kind of leave that one there. We're not gonna do the land use map tonight. So that's gonna be probably one whole topic
Yeah.
in its own.
Wednesday.
Next one is EC3, this is economic development goals. All right, can you see that? All right, so the goal that was here was a balanced local economy supported by strong property values, emerging commercial centers, a distinct sense of place, and high quality of life.
I don't know about that emerging commercial centers. I don't
Mhm.
know that anybody wants an emerging. I think more along the lines of supporting the centers that we already have, but I don't know how to word that.
Just say existing instead of emergent.
Yeah, existing commercial centers, yeah, instead of
existing.
emerging.
Existing commercial centers.
Can we change commercial to business too? Because we always
Yeah.
say we don't have a
Yeah.
commercial, we have a business.
So
Yeah.
existing
Get the verbiage to match.
business centers. All right. So, number one, promote small scale neighborhood businesses with a focus on serving the residents of Hinckley. Attract new neighborhood commercial uses to town center area as designated on the future land use map. And allow a mix of scale neighborhood commercial uses along 130th.
Can you actually do what that's saying? Allow a mix of small scale neighborhood? Can you limit it to small or no? Because I understand that you necessarily can't.
We limit it to square footage, right?
Okay.
I mean, that would be how you would limit small, one way.
But my definition of small may be different than yours. So that would be the only thing
We limit square footage per acreage.
You can limit the building size
Square footage
per
based on the
per
acreage.
lot area. You can limit the size of the building. I mean, we have that 7,000 square foot in B2 maybe. So. Again, depending on 1.2 or how the future land use map comes, I think 1.2 is actually very important to keep. Because that's again, that firewall along West 130th. And so I just think we gotta have some opportunities for West 130th.
I'm looking at the word neighborhood.
It sounds like a good word.
It sounds good.
I think that they were
know.
trying to stay away from,
Should it just say a
Big
small
box.
Big
scale,
box.
small scale business? Get rid of commercial, get rid of neighborhood.
is
Yeah.
Subway a small scale?
Depends on how you look at it. Square footage, yes, but in the grand scheme of things, no.
That's why I think that neighborhood was in there, because you want to think of Subway as a neighborhood restaurant, even though their franchise is a
Okay.
local owner.
All right.
That would be my guess. I don't
But I
know.
agree with taking out commercial and adding business where
Place
commercial
commercial
is.
business again.
You could do that for both of those
Because
action
again,
items.
the verbiage, keeping the verbiage.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it should be that way throughout the plan. Instead of commercial saying business.
So up until now, why don't we have subways, for instance, on West 130th Street? Just because
People
a
own it.
corporation like that couldn't make enough money off it?
Oh, they absolutely. I mean, if you look up by, I'm sure that in the next 10 years, we'll see significant development up by,
Bennett's Corners.
correct. And so I would imagine that if there's some sort of strip building that ever goes in there, you'll see some sort of sandwich shop.
I'm searching for a word better than neighborhood. But neighborhood is pretty good.
Okay.
I'm okay with it.
We're good with one for now? All right, number two, expand commercial development opportunities outside of the existing CRA to grow new economic opportunities. So for those who don't know what a CRA is, that is a community reinvestment area. And what that means is that we have 2 CRAs in place today. They're at 303, going north is one where Aldi's is, and that's what they received for any new construction or expansion. There's a whole scale, but generally it's 100% tax abatement for 15 years. South of 303, going along 130th, up to maybe where Great Lakes is or whatever, that is a 50% tax abatement CRA zone. So for 15 years, any new development would be eligible to receive a 50%. So that's what CRAs are. CRAs is a very old tool. The one that was put in place north of 303 was put in place before 1994. And the other one was put in, I think, 1998. So, and what changed there is that before 1994, townships in conjunction with the county could develop a CRA zone. After that, the school districts got involved and they could cap what those amounts would be because they're losing tax base, basically. So that's why the south half is 50%. Although I think there might be a change in law to up that to 75% now. But anyway, so that's what that says, expand commercial development opportunities outside of the existing CRA zones to grow new economic opportunities. And the way that's suggesting is to support limited manufacturing and commercial at the southeast corner of 130th and Babcock. That's very defined location. Well, at 130th and Babcock, gee, didn't we just approve a site plan for an office building there? So.
I mean, it's up north, probably significantly from Babcock.
Is it?
Yeah, because Babcock's over by where,
Adult daycare.
yeah, it's even north of
There's
that
that new
one.
development that's in between.
Pine
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Stream, there's a golf course between
this is-
there, so that's pretty far.
Pretty far.
Yeah,
So this is at the southeast corner of 130th and Babcock. Well, that would be adult daycare.
Adult daycare.
Yeah.
I
I think it's because if you look at, again, we didn't touch the future land use, but if you look at the future land use map as it's currently written, commercial goes all the way up to Babcock. Whereas commercial right now basically stops at the Aldi's. So
yeah,
it was suggesting a significant expansion upward of the commercial district.
Right.
And that's where that thing came from.
yeah. So I'm not certain that that is still a valid. That certainly the people that live in that area would like something more suitable to replace the former adult daycare. Those are residents down those streets and, you know, I'm certain they would have one view if we were to put these kind of questions out. And the other one is to support limited manufacturing and commercial on 130th south of Sleepy Hollow Road, the southern portion of the township, which is a huge swath of land. And if I recall,
Where's Sleepy Hollow?
the new development that's
Hey,
going
that's the
there.
golf.
Prairie Vista.
Prairie Vista is right there at Sleepy Hollow.
Oh, okay.
So
That
that's,
would include that Bennett's Corners area, correct?
no, it was south of Laurel. South of Laurel, where you probably never go.
So again, it's part of, if you go back to that
Yeah.
future land use
It was
map,
everything.
it's controlling all of this because the future land use map. Here's basically where we stop business right now is right up here, and they're expanding it way down here. And then they're also proposing it down in the bottom corner. So all of those are moving towards this future land
Yeah,
use
so
map.
we may have to postpone this section until we look at the news map.
The only thing I'd say is expand business instead of expand commercial, again.
I would even almost not say expand, but consider commercial or consider business growth opportunities, just so that there's the opportunity to consider it, but not necessarily expand it. Perhaps it makes expansion make sense, but perhaps it doesn't make sense to do CRAs.
No, that would be at the very beginning of that.
Instead of expand commercial,
It'd be consider.
Consider business development.
I know,
Oh,
Oh,
I'm just kind of rewriting it.
okay.
So consider business, growth, development opportunities. And I think just a short statement, something like that. I don't think we have to get into referencing the zones at this point. Is that okay? And I think 2.1, 2.2, they're gonna change based upon what the land use map is. So, and my point being that Sleepy Hollow, we got Prairie Vista going in there, so those are, like $1 million homes. And they're probably not gonna wanna be sitting next to a commercial property, so this will be really part of the survey that's really gonna, I think, identify new ways to enhance the competitiveness of existing economic centers. And so number one, create a JED between Brunswick and 130th. That was attempted and that was
That ship is.
decided not to go that way because the district number one included a cemetery. And amongst other things, just the balance of control and properties that were included in there. So that was looked at and it was decided not to pursue that. Number two, the JED, just so if you don't know, that's Joint Economic Development District. And that becomes its own political entity with its own board of directors that can tax the businesses that are in there. They have spending authority with the revenues they collect. So here, this action plan is very specific, use revenue from JEDs to expand water and sewer. Well, the reality is that once the JED is created, the comprehensive plan really is not going to control what the JED authority is going to do. So that might be desirable in terms of the comprehensive plan was written in 2015, but something that really could not be attainable because you no longer have control. So, collaborate with neighboring communities, promote development along the western boundary of the township, new development to create up economic development strategies such as service sharing, new community authorities, etc.
Kind of wonder if we can just get rid of 1 and 2 and move JED as part of the EG. So collaborate with new EG, sharing service, JEDs, new, whatever possibilities might exist. But
Number three.
and number 3.3, keep it and just in the EG section down at the bottom where they're giving examples of ways that you
Oh,
can work
I'm like,
development.
what EG? I'm seeing ED. Okay, I got you.
You see
Right.
right down there, you could just say EG JEDs is another possible.
And there's
Development
another
strategy.
tool, yeah, there's another tool also available, and it kind of moves to it in terms of other types of community agreements. Really, we could say CRAs, although those are probably not easy to do anymore. Okay,
Do you do CRAs with other communities though? Cause that section is all about working with other communities and I
oh,
don't
I'm
think
sorry.
CRAs are really.
no, that section was identifying new ways to enhance the competitiveness of existing economic centers.
Sorry, 3.3 is all
Yeah.
about working with other communities, Brunswick,
Yeah. well,
Strongsville, North
So
Middleton.
we've taken out though. Okay, so the heading, new ways to enhance the competitiveness of existing economic centers, but all the action items are working with other
Communities, yeah.
communities. So that's like a misguidance there.
Yeah, it is.
Because let's go back and look at the other one, consider business growth development opportunities. And assuming we identify areas on the land use map, then really wouldn't 3.3 in a sense become another
Action.
business growth opportunity. So that way, you just state categorically business growth opportunities and whether they are within the township or you want to do it in a combined collaboration and just really be,
Make it more succinct.
Mhm.
so I I take this out. And really make this,
2.3.
yep. Oops. And we don't even need to do the EG. You could just say collaborate with neighboring communities.
Can you go back up to the, the objective ED2?
Yeah, hang on a second. The objective, which one?
ED2, consider business. Do we want to mention anything about, consider new business growth development opportunities and enhancing existing? Do we want to call out that that's now considering both existing improvements and new businesses, or do we not care? Is that just fine as considered? Because I think of growth as some sort of new and not support of existing. But
I'm not opposed.
We're not including town center.
none of those action items relate to town center at all.
Well,
I'm not
that's
suggesting
only
it.
Right.
because they didn't.
And right. 'Cause
That doesn't mean that they can't.
Right. Well, ED1 focuses almost entirely, I think, on town center.
Yeah, so it talks about 130.
Yeah, ED 1.1, I guess, focuses entirely on town center.
There we go.
So, let me just see what, I think that was it. Yep,
That answers my question. Thank you.
so,
I don't think it's a bad thing to promote existing in there as well, consider business growth, development and opportunities and.
Maybe ED2 is all supposed to be about new, because ED1, objective 1 is all about existing. Promote small scale neighborhood businesses with focus on serving the residents. Although it's not,
it did
I
say
don't know.
existing, it says attract new.
Yeah, it says well, it doesn't say either. Attract new.
Yeah,
allow a
it doesn't even
mix.
suggest enhance.
Yeah, there's nothing about promoting existing.
And maybe this will become more clear again as we do the land use map. But let's just kind of leave it here. At least we've kind of identified things that maybe. Were not applicable there, I guess. Character and image. This is one of the plus signs here. A goal is a unique and distinctive character that is preserved and strengthened by a distinct town center, the rural countryside, the scenic natural features, an expansive park system. It's a lot. Promote the Hinckley Town Center as the historic, institutional, commercial, and social hub of the community. Everything is lumped in the Hinckley Town Center.
I like that. I think it's the heart. I don't know what institutional means, but other than that.
And then we got that commercial word in there.
Mhm.
So encourage pedestrian-oriented retail, office, and service uses with parking located to the side or rear of the buildings to encourage walking and enhance the pedestrian realm. And continue to encourage buildings to be developed closer to the street. Enhance and expand the existing pedestrian network in the town center. These ambiguous terms, network and realm, kind of are mind-boggling. All right, what do you want to do with this one?
Well, I want to take out commercial,
Right,
but I agree with Marcus in the fact that I don't know what institutional, are we putting in a crazy house downtown? But institutional, what is that?
delete that. Is that what you said?
I agree.
I don't know what it
Yeah.
means.
Yeah.
Either.
So as the historic, comma, business and social hub of the community, I think that stands well alone.
Mhm. Okay. So encourage pedestrian oriented retail, office and service uses with parking located beside or rear of the buildings to encourage walking and enhance the pedestrian realm.
Maybe pedestrian access.
Encourage walking and enhance pedestrian access.
And no the.
I like access better.
Yeah, I don't, and no the either.
Right. Okay, continue to encourage buildings to be developed closer to the street.
Mhm.
Oh, I thought you said, mm-mm.
No, that's good.
Oh, okay. Enhance and expand the existing pedestrian network in town center.
We call it circulation, I think, in our code. I don't know if you like that better or not, but pedestrian circulation.
I mean, not against that.
I
You
don't
guys okay
care.
with that?
Developed
Circulation.
closer to the street. It's technical, but should it be road?
Well, it is, because we have two roads. State routes.
Yeah. I think I would prefer road there.
Well,
And then
Now I
you're,
don't know.
and Mark, you're saying instead of access.
I know in C 1.3 where it says pedestrian network, Cindy had
Oh.
mentioned what's network, and that's normally where you would put like pedestrian circulation, it's your sidewalks.
was that okay with everybody?
Sure.
That kind of is the idea of people moving. Okay. Was that adequate?
Maybe within the town center.
Within,
Well,
It's already, oh,
it's already the objective up above is town
instead
center.
of in, you mean?
Yeah.
Use within instead of in.
well, why even say in the town center if we're talking about town center?
True.
Fair.
Okay.
Okay, so it's 8 o'clock. Talked about meeting for an hour and a half. So shall we stop for the night?
Good with that.
Because there's quite a bit here and we're not gonna get through all this tonight anyway. So. Okay. Yes? That's fine.
Yes,
Yes.
And would you predict that the next meeting will be continue working on the objectives and actions
Yes, I would predict that.
and perhaps nothing more?
When are we going to do that future use map? Because I know you said that that's a meeting by
Right.
itself, but
Yeah, so I think we want to finish the objectives. We're gonna go through the objectives and action things like we're doing tonight. And then I know I might hope to get a clean document for you guys, and that's probably gonna take up all next meeting. And then maybe the meeting afterwards, we start with land use map and tear that apart. And by then, hopefully I have a better software on my desktop. So I can actually manipulate it better.
Speaking of the future land map, is this like, I'm not I mean, I'm a techie person, but not like, can we amend, like, do you have the ability to amend that? Like,
Oh, physically?
yeah,
That I may not be able to do, but like, if anything,
You
just
just
mark it
cross
up
things off.
and I would take it to planning and.
I got a laptop with Microsoft Paint, if you'd like.
speeds it all up.
Well, we could mark it up that way, right?
When it
Okay.
comes to future land use, how are you going to incorporate things that Nawaka and the Metro Parks are planning? I mean, they have their own ideas.
Well, this is our plan. And
then-
then that's gonna be real key because there's, back in 2015, when you look at that, the, one of those land maps, they've got a huge rectangle along the entire river in terms of like future
Pathways.
pathways for metro parks. So it's up to us to say what we want to see.
Yeah.
And if you know what NOACA wants to do, and, you don't want to see that happen, or you do want to see it happen, then
Can we get
Put it
that
out.
map? So that way when we do our map, that it can at least be, we would have that as a reference.
Yes.
You know what I
yeah.
mean? So that way we can kind of see what their boundaries,
Yeah, it would
future
be,
use map is.
it'd be really interesting for all of us to see that. Very, very
Yeah, I'm
interesting.
trying to think those pictures that I took when they were at the library there.
Well, they just released, so they had their final plan. on
Oh, yeah,
So
Friday.
we can be prepared for that
Friday.
meeting.
So,
I can, it's not very detailed, unfortunately.
yeah, just, what, shoot me the link where it is so I can get it out to the group. Okay, John?
We'll send it to you. Right.
Cindy, when you do that, the other thing I'm wondering is if we can pull the map of Brunswick and look at what they're doing along West 130th. So that we can see how our map looks in comparison to that border.
Yeah, I'll see if I can get it.
Just as another reference point.
Okay, next meeting is, July 16th at 6:30. So try to go through those objectives and actions that are remaining so that we can kind of scroll through them. Now that you get an idea of kind of what we're doing. Okay, anybody from the public that would like to make any comments?
Not on record.
Oh, okay.
I have questions.
Well, you can come up to the podium and ask questions, no? All right. Anybody else? Anything else? All right, so we'll adjourn at 8:05.